Oh my God.
Hello. We're super excited to be here. We're a little late. Apologies for that. JB was in wardrobe and we had to get him out.
This one kinky hair wouldn't stay to the right side. So
we are super excited to be here. We are so excited to be part of Tube Dudes Live, the spring edition. And for those of you who aren't familiar with us, I'm Christopher.
I'm the other guy, Jamie.
And for those of you who are familiar with us, you'll notice that the setting's a little different. We're not in the cabin anymore.
We're actually about 20 minutes outside of Ottawa in a beautiful historic town along the Gatineau River called Wakefield.
It's gorgeous. It's got kind of a bohemian feel to it. It's really, really nice.
And we're in this absolutely beautiful Victorian mansion. And it's called Les Trois Érables, which in English is the Three Maples. And there are three majestic sugar maple trees right in front of the mansion, which there's a point to that for later.
They are gorgeous, absolutely beautiful, and they're huge as well. Okay, so should we explain the rules? They're not rules. There's no rules.
How this is going to work.
We're going to explain how all this stuff works. So we are here. We're on from 12, or actually 12:02 to 12:45, and then you're going to be transported over to Stuart. You're going to land in the wool patch, and Stuart's going to talk for 45 minutes. And we'll be talking about stuff like the springtime. We'll be talking about wool. We'll be talking about dyeing. There's a whole bunch of great topics, crafty topics. And then after Stuart, it will come back across the pond and it will be to Needles at the Ready with Kevin and Ray. And then after that, it's going to the very talented Michael and for Piece. And then it goes to Fiber Hustle with Chip and Aaron. So I'm reading the comments. I can read them actually a lot better when I have my glasses on. But I know a lot of you have grabbed a pot of coffee.
On the go. You got your knitting on the go.
Yes.
Getting ready to settle in for the day.
Yeah, I've got my knitting as well. I'll be settled in for the day as well.
And I don't have any knitting because I can't talk and knit at the same time. Never could. Don't know if I'll ever be able to.
Or chew gum.
Or think.
Anyway, so we're super excited to be here. And I just wanted to thank all of you for joining us today because we love doing this.
Exactly. And to mes amis francophones, bienvenue à vous aussi.
Now I said we were in Wakefield, so we're not near our cabin. We're about over 2 hours away from our cabin, and we are 25 minutes away from the nation's capital, Ottawa. I've got a couple facts about Ottawa.
So just to say, we're still in Canada.
We're still in Canada, yes. Yeah, we are. So two things I want to mention. One of them is the Algonquins named Ottawa. It was Ottawa, and that was really a trading place. So that's
a trading place.
Yeah, it's where they trade.
So that's what the Ottawa in the Algonquin language means.
Yes, yeah. And then the second piece of it is, why is Ottawa the capital? Well, Queen Victoria had a decision to make. She had to decide whether it was going to be Montreal or Kingston or Toronto. And so she figured, or Ottawa. And so she was looking at them. She was given some advice. But she made the executive decision. She basically said, you know what? Ottawa is somewhat in close proximity to the other cities. And it's further away from the American border. That was an important piece of it. In case there was conflict, she didn't want it to be right on the border. So that was the rationale of why deciding Ottawa.
And part of it is, though, like the very first parliament, let's say, buildings were built in like Fort York, Toronto, way back when, and they were burned to the ground. That's a part of history that's way back before the actual choosing of Ottawa. Yeah. And then Kingston for a while was it not technically a capital?
That was
for a short period?
Was going to be the capital.
And that was because it's the location of Kingston is strategically it was very, very fortified right at the entrance to the St. Lawrence River. And the St. Lawrence River comes from the Atlantic. It goes inland all the way almost to the center of Canada, to the Great Lakes. There's a connection. So that was, as you mentioned, with the U.S., a little bit more strategic to move the capital where it would have been vulnerable to the interior.
Yeah, it was very strategic. Yep.
Of the country.
So Queen Victoria made a great choice. Yeah. Ottawa is also a beautiful city.
And you have a few other facts about?
Well, it's the 6th coldest capital in the world.
Oh.
And it is the 4th largest city in Canada. It's after Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. But Jamie, I brought my knitting because I know you've got a couple facts that you want to roll into. So I'm going to knit while you share facts with everyone else.
This is the time where a lot of people go make a sandwich. Okay.
Or a
I'm-
lasagna.
or a full meal,
Or
a full four-course meal, I suppose. I'm going to talk. Okay, I'm going to mention one thing about Ottawa that I like to talk about. This is very historical, and it's
You're going to mention more than one thing about Ottawa, but go ahead.
And he always interrupts because it's really challenging to keep my train of thought. So it's going to be the World UNESCO Heritage Site of the Rideau Canal.
Mhm.
So the Rideau Canal was built out of stone. It was built between 1826 and 1832. It took 6 years to build, dug out by hand through the Canadian Shield and the Canadian wilderness.
Yeah.
And it has 45 locks. It's over 200 kilometers long, 126 miles long, 45 locks. And it's a World UNESCO Heritage Site because it is still fully operational and still all of its original structures. Now, over 1,000 workers died during its construction.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh.
Yeah, fascinating facts. Unbelievable if you think about it. And it's a masterpiece in creative genius technology for the day, and for it to be still running completely today. And the reason it was built was to connect. We talked about Ottawa, we talked about Kingston. It connects Ottawa to Kingston inland via the canals to bypass the section of the St. Lawrence following the War of 1812. There was never another U.S. invasion or any sort of with the U.S. since 1812, but because that war happened, they wanted to bypass that part of the St. Lawrence, which was vulnerable to any sort of, for ships going by and the economy and all of that. And today it's mostly used for thousands upon thousands of tourists make their way through these beautiful canals inland.
Are you going to?
And what else? I know what he's going to say.
Are you going to get to the winter part of it?
That's what he was waiting for, because in the winter, it's one of the longest skating rinks in the world, and gazillions of people from around the world come to the Ottawa Winterlude Festival.
And gazillion is a technical term, and also the river is, or the skating portion of the canal is over 7 kilometers long.
Right. It doesn't
That's
go.
crazy.
You mean it doesn't go for 200 kilometers?
No.
Well, that's what I thought
It's
made it the
amazing,
largest
though.
skating rink. And you know what? I've not even skated. I've skated it. Oh my gosh. The coffee hasn't kicked in, folks.
I got good skates and I skated it all the way along the path.
No, I've skated. I like to say I've skated all over the world, literally. Well, a few places that most of you probably haven't, because I make a thing of skating. I've skated in China. I've skated in Beijing. I've skated in front of the Tower of London.
Yeah.
I've skated in Glasgow on the main square. I've not skated on the freaking canal.
I can't believe you forgot Rockefeller Square.
Rockefeller Square, yes.
Yes.
New York City, my first time there, and we were at Vogue Knitting, so there's a knitting connection. We wore our Canadiana hats and our knitted hats, our
Archie hats
with the pom-poms, and we skated, and people were like, they're real Canadians. They must be Canadian because they could actually skate.
Well, I skate like a hockey player. Like I've got my.
I skate like
Dorothy Hamill.
No, it wasn't Dorothy Hamill. It was José Chouinard.
No, but your posture is great when you're skating. I'm hunched over.
I'm going to bring it to Canada. It's more like José Chouinard, and she's well known as one of our top figure skaters who landed on her butt all the time.
I was going to say you had less snow on your ass.
I was really bad at the triple sow cow, I have to say. Anyway, so that's a little bit of Ottawa Canal UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Yes. And was there anything else you wanted to share?
I don't know.
Ottawa?
Where we ought to go from here.
Well, we've been talking, we haven't really we weren't diving into the wool stuff. We've got wool stuff, crafts to talk about. And is there any connection to Ottawa that we can pull the wool into it?
There is.
Imagine that.
Because Canada has very few real native sheep in its lands. Most of them have been brought over. But if you think of Canada, there are over 1 million sheep, over 8,500 sheep farms. There are over 1,000 purebred sheep farmers. And there was the sheep that are the most popular are the Suffolk, I believe, Suffolk Dorset.
Yeah.
But there were 3 breeds that were developed in right here in Ottawa. So at the Animal Research Center in Ottawa, they developed the Arcots. And the Arcots, this is between 1966 and 1974. There's the Rideau Arcot, the Canadian Arcot, and the Ottawa Arcot. So some of these sheep go back thousands of years, but these 1966. And by 1988, once they were bred, they were then shipped off. You could purchase them, and they were produced and off to some of the shepherds they went. So they were a blend of, now you think of the harsh conditions within Canada. So their sheep are always they always redevelop a sheep to be more hardy, more, better meat, better yarn, better for the conditions of their environment. The mix of the Arcot, it's a mix of, as I mentioned, the Suffolk. There's also Cheviot, Ile-de-France. Those are the main percentages. But there's also like Finn and, oh my gosh, there's about 7 different types. Cordial,
57.
Finn, pretty much.
Yeah.
But they created these 3 sheep. Now the Rideau and the Ottawa were developed to be better for the production and their milking activities and procreating. So they're now very well established here in Canada, and they can produce like 40% are twins, 50% triplets, and some of the Ottawa will even have a litter of maybe 4 at a time, and a couple of times a year. So that's why they were bred. And the Canadian Arcot was bred, and all of the top characteristics for a meat producing sheep, for high quality meat, that was the meat production.
Right.
So now the Rideau is now by far the 2nd most popular and registered sheep in Canada, and the Canadian Arcot as well is popular, but for some reason the Ottawa is not as popular as the other 3 sheep.
And you're starting to see in yarn shops the Arcot popping up.
Yeah,
because it wasn't, they weren't thinking necessarily of the wool factor when they were creating it, but you are seeing it pop up now, because wool, you can do so many things with wool. It's not hats or just hats and
it's still,
so many things.
No, they mentioned one for the meat, but the other wools, they are a high quality wool because of the mix of the Lincoln and some of the other sheep.
Right.
So it is a medium grade, and it's still very soft and lush and lustrous, and a medium grade wool, which is quite nice.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Why, I understand Rideau Canal. I understand Canada. What about Arcot? Where did that come from?
Oh, I forgot to mention the one thing that Arcot, the name Arcot, Animal Research Center, Ottawa.
Excellent.
What do you call that?
Arcot. Yes.
Ottawa.
Yep.
What's it called? What's you call that?
An acronym.
An acronym. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, speaking of wool, speaking of acronyms. Now, speaking of wool, I've been working on some stuff with wool, and I want to talk a little bit about that. So I've been focused on socks, and I'm going down the sock road right now, and basically I'm looking at different types of bases, because I have my work socks that I'll knit, which are Briggs & Little. I like using Briggs & Little. But I also, for a lighter weight sock, I have been going down the road of looking at certain things. One of them is Blue-Faced Leicester. So I've been knitting up some socks with Blue-Faced Leicester.
And I want to mention Briggs & Little because they're well known. They're the biggest, one of the larger mills. They're well known across Canada.
Yeah, this is the Briggs & Little socks right here.
Those are the ones he hasn't washed in a few days.
That is not true.
The wool, that antibacterial wool, right? And you don't need to wash them for a very long time. But that Briggs & Little yarn, it's hardy, it's good, it's great for outdoor wear or anything.
Outdoor wear. Yeah.
Outdoor wear.
Yeah. So
and these would be your fancier dress socks.
These are the fancy schmancy socks. So these, so the pattern is from Church Mouse Classic. It's called Basic.
I like Basic.
I don't.
I like it.
I don't do Basic.
I haven't done.
So I jazzed it up a little bit. So here, so this is what I did. I wanted to go down the road of BFL and say, and so this is a BFL, and I dyed it at indigo, lac, and marigold.
But how did you get these stripes?
It's magic. But so first of all, I just want to talk about the brown stripes in it. So I took the lac, which comes from a bug, and then I dyed it in marigold after that. And then I put the entire skein, sorry, I left out a piece. I did half of it in marigold, half of it in lac, and then I put the whole thing in indigo. So we've got half a dark color and then half the indigo color. So I came up with these great colors in the socks, and so they feel fantastic. There's something in the BFL, and it feels great on as socks. So I love them. So I'm gonna. This is the first part.
And that's because BFL, which we did a history of BFL in the past,
Blue-faced
we're not
luster.
getting into blue-faced luster, and that has, because of the longer staples, it's Lincoln Longwool and merino. So people
Yes.
don't know how a lot of the sheeps, merino is one of the bases in the development of the sheep. They often used merino in almost just about every blend and development of sheep to get the beautiful softness. So you have this beautiful softness, and the staples are longer.
Yeah.
Lincoln Longwool, and so you have this fantastic soft wool.
So the objective is basically to come up with a sock that I'm happy with that doesn't have nylon in it. So I'm going to be test wearing the BFL socks, and I'll let everybody know how that goes. Did you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, in the basic pattern that even I could knit, because I haven't knit a sock yet.
Yes, yeah, you could definitely. There'd be no problem for you.
And these?
So these are.
That is nice.
Same pattern, and this is merino and flat linen. So it's merino and linen blend, and it was really interesting to knit up. It felt great. It feels great. It almost, you said it felt a little bit like cotton.
Yeah,
and it definitely has that cotton feel to it.
And it has a slight more sturdiness than
yes.
this BFL, because this is it still has a softness, but it has more of a sturdiness.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about the two socks, one of them, well, they're different bases, but secondly, and they feel completely different from one another. But I used the same colors in this sock as this one, minus the indigo. So this is just oh no, sorry, I did use the indigo. I used the exact same color in this sock as this sock.
Yes, you were right the first time.
Yeah. So
you got the green.
So to get the green, I used marigold and indigo. So that gave me the green. And then for the brown, I used the indigo and marigold and lac.
Which you see the brown in here.
Yeah. Yep. So
amazing. Well, how different they know.
I know they look so different, and they're the same
exactly.
dye that's used for
that's what
each of them.
Natural dye magic. That's how it works.
Yeah.
If you know your color wheel.
And so and so the last one I just wanted to mention is I'm knitting something right now, and this is indigo. It's just indigo, and then I'm putting the heel and the toe will be. This is just undyed yarn.
And what is that yarn?
This is Gotland yarn.
Oh, I love Gotland.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm just interested to see how the colors come out on this, and then how it wears. You filmed me yesterday in Ottawa knitting.
I did.
You did, and I was knitting beside the 5 famous women in Canada, 5 Albertan women. It's the statue, not the actual women that were there. I was knitting beside the statue.
Oh, that's another fascinating fact about Ottawa. That was right across from the Parliament buildings.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So they're known as the Famous 5.
And why are they the Famous 5?
Because they actually gave status or argued for status for women, and eventually won. So,
but wasn't it overruled?
It was over. Yeah, I mean, the Canadian Supreme Court wasn't up. They weren't in tune with, or they weren't on the right side of history, so it had to be overturned by our friends over in the UK.
Friends, namely the Queen.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, the point of the story was I'm knitting beside the statue, and someone on Instagram said to me, "Why are your needles, some of your needles longer than others?" And I said to Jamie, "People notice everything."
I just assume that nobody's really watching, and then you got over 2,500 people who've seen this or made note of your little project online. And the funny thing is, someone could see from that distance, with a lot going on, that the needles weren't quite the same. And I find that hysterical.
So the answer for that, just before we switch topics, is I was knitting with these DPNs and
DPNs.
double pointed needles,
Oh
Jamie.
gosh.
And when I was knitting the heel, I'm knitting the heel right now. I found that I was getting too close to the ends, and they slipped
Oh.
off a couple times. So I just thought I would put in larger needles. That's it. That was it.
See,
See,
and it all works.
So there was a
out.
reason for it.
Yeah.
So thank you for asking.
There you go.
There you go. Should we go into foraging?
Sure.
That sounds
Because
fun?
springtime, you like to forage because things start to pop up from the ground.
They do, yes. And so with natural dyeing, it's really, at least for us anyway, I point to myself, for us, it is really driven by the season. And we'll look for what's out in the springtime to dye with. And so springtime is fun. There's two things that happen in the springtime. One of them is we figure out what we want to plant for the summer and the fall. And the other is we actually go out and forage. And there are things that you can do in the springtime to forage, some of the stuff that we love to dye with. One of them is bloodroot. Bloodroot has been used by Indigenous people for thousands of years. And you actually use the root of the bloodroot, and it gives you an orangey red color.
It's bloodroot.
It's bloodroot, yes. Hence the name.
Hence they're using the root.
So, and we've got some on our property as well.
Yeah, we discovered them. I mean,
Yes.
It was right there in plain sight, but unless you know what you're looking for, because you can't see the roots, because the roots are under the ground, right?
Yeah.
So, but you notice they're like frilly little leaves coming up all along the driveway.
Yes.
And you recognized it as bloodroot.
Oh my God. I jumped out of the car and I was so excited. The little
I should have had my camera ready.
So they'll be up. So I'll be excited about that. Dandelions. People hate dandelions, but I love dandelions because we dye with our dandelions, dye yarn with them. We use the flower heads. You can use them in food. You can also dig up the roots, and you can roast the roots, and it tastes like coffee.
And that's true. They in past days they did it as a substitute for coffee. And sure enough, I didn't believe him. But then when he brewed that stuff, and I'm not going to try because I have a lot of allergies to plants and trees and things, so I'm not trying something I've not had before. But it had the scent of coffee.
Yeah,
and I don't know what the taste did. It taste kind of like coffee.
It did. It didn't taste. I mean, it definitely had a hint of. It did taste somewhat like coffee, but it was good. It's a beverage.
Yeah, like
a hot beverage.
So you make a tea out of it, or an iced tea with it.
Yeah, but if you get the roots early in spring, they'll be a little bitter, so you wait a little bit longer. But that's the same with dyeing as well. If you pick the dandelions right away, you'll get a different intensity versus later on in the summer. So so we use our dandelions for that. And then the third thing I get super excited about is lilacs. We have lilac trees all over our property, and you can find them all over Ontario. And a lot of them are on just close to the roads or close to ditches as well.
Yeah, but they're a decorative. They're
a
very, very old decorative.
They are
shrub, plant / tree as well, because people had them in there, especially you think in the Victorian days, and I remember them as a child. Everybody had a lilac tree in their front yard or their backyard.
Well, in farms especially as well.
Yeah.
And so we take I get three colors out of lilac. I take the lilac flower, and it's beautiful. You can use purple ones, the French lilacs, the white ones, and so I put that in a dye pot. Then I take the leaves, and the leaves are magical as well. And you take the leaves out and you put them in another dye pot. And then you take the bark and you put the bark in another dye pot. And then I cook it up, put my yarn in, and I will have, do you want to guess the colors? Do you remember the colors?
No, I don't remember.
Okay. So when I have we'll do that one last. So the leaves, what color comes out of the leaves?
Yellow.
Yes. But the fantastic thing with that is when you're boiling the leaves and you put alum in, because you need a mordant to help bind the color to the yarn, it makes the color just electric yellow. It's so fantastic.
And I only said yellow because we know that a lot of plants, one of the first primary colors you can get is yellow out of most plants. Doesn't matter what color they are, you get yellow. But then there are other magical plants that you would think, well, probably get yellow, but tradition has told us, and we know from recipes, of course, other plants you can get other magical colors.
Ontario is very good at producing yellow, the Ontario plants. And then the next thing is the bark. And the bark, do you remember what color that is? It's like a light brown color. It's nice. It's a fawn-ish, but it's very nice, and it's complementary to the other colors. And then the last one, when we use the purple flowers, And
They
then
really,
white
because they're those
flowers.
beautiful, deep, deep purple flowers.
Yeah, yeah. So what color is that?
It's not purple.
It is a yellowish green color.
Oh, it leans. Yes,
leans
because
toward green
it
and
almost,
is beautiful.
You know what? It's almost like the color of this
It
cat.
is. Oh, that's perfect.
Like this.
Yes.
He's got his vodka in there.
Yeah, straight vodka.
No.
I have Wakefield water in here.
Wakefield.
Yes, and it's very good.
I know, because we drink well water and we go to the city. I'm like, I love it. City water. No, it's true. I'm like, oh, I like it.
I love water. Anyway, those are the three that I'm really looking forward to. And then we'll be doing some planting as well. So how about you?
How about me?
So what about...
Where should we go next?
I think we should go to spring traditions.
Okay, let's start. Well, you know what? Let's start. I'll bring it back to Ottawa and one of the spring traditions there.
But before you do that,
you mentioned lilacs.
Did we talk about a contest? I can't remember.
Oh,
I think I was so excited about
a contest.
Talking about the two dudes that I forgot to talk about the contest. There's actually a contest. So everybody's having a contest. Yes,
sort of giveaway.
Yeah. So here's the deal. We are going to be at the end of, or close to the end of our piece of it. We are going to ask a question, and then if you know the answer, there's a link in the show notes, and you can answer in the show notes. So there's a link that takes you to a template. Just complete the template, and there's 2 prizes.
And you got to pay close attention to some very fascinating facts, because one of those facts will be the answer.
Yes. Yeah. And so the prizes are, one of them is a knitting pattern and the other one is a crochet pattern.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Is there yarn included?
Sure.
No, I don't know. You didn't tell. He doesn't tell me. Look at me. I'm giving away I'm giving away everything.
Well, there is now. So
I'm like, huh?
Okay. So over to Jamie.
Oh my gosh, I can't even think now.
Jamie, talk about some spring traditions.
Okay, I want to talk about bringing it back to Ottawa, because this is a fascinating piece of history, and it's also a fascinating and one of the world's largest festivals of its kind. Tulip Festival. Now, tulips come up in the springtime. So in Ottawa, they have the largest festival with over 1 million blooming tulips with over 100 varieties. And how did that come about? I'm going to tell you. So picture it, 1940. This is the sad part of it, but let's just go right into the history, bring it back to tulips. 1940, Germans invade the Netherlands. 1940, the royal family are evacuated. They escaped, they're evacuated to England. But then in England, there was the threat of German bombing raids. So they were then found shelter in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, they settled in Ottawa. So this is Princess Juliana, who is next in line to the throne, and her 2 daughters, Beatrix and Irene. So the Germans occupied the Netherlands for 5 years. And during this time, Juliana was pregnant. So she was rushed in January of 1943. She was rushed to the Ottawa Civic Hospital because she was about to give birth. What Canada did was they signed an emergency temporary declaration to make her hospital room in the Civic Hospital Dutch territory, so that Princess Margaret, who was then born, could be a Dutch citizenship with the right to ascend to the throne if need be at some point.
Yeah.
Now, following the occupation, 5 years of the Netherlands, the Canadian troops liberated the Netherlands along with allies, but the majority would have been Canadian. The Canadians are known for liberating the Netherlands. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it is Canadians with allies. Following that, the royal family returned to the Netherlands, where Juliana sent as a thank you for what Canada did with the liberation, and also for giving the royal family safe haven in Canada. She gave 100,000 tulip bulbs, which were then planted. She's continued this tradition. She continued this tradition even once she ascended the throne in 1948, and continued. And that tradition continues to this day, with not only the royals giving about 10,000 every year. But some of the Dutch citizens send
Yeah.
tulip bulbs. And in Ottawa, as I mentioned, there are over 100 million, I mean, 100 million, a million blooms. And some
Yeah.
of those are historically there's a huge bed of 100,000 in itself where the Civic Hospital in Ottawa is, and another in Queen Juliana Park. And that is why the Tulip Festival is now known worldwide. And another little tidbit of information about that festival I want to mention is there's a famous picture of Margaret Trudeau kneeling down in the tulip patch as a little girl.
Oh yes, yep.
And who knew that many years later she's the mother of our current prime minister, and she was the wife of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who was also prime minister, Justin Trudeau. He's my prime minister boyfriend. That's his dad. So that connection is kind of fascinating, that this little girl one day lived on Parliament Hill.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So
I just had one tidbit to add to that story.
Okay.
And maybe I missed it when I was purling. But did you explain why they designated the hospital room as territory of the Netherlands?
Yeah.
Okay, I missed that part.
He doesn't pay attention.
No, but because
it's like when I speak.
Because in order to have claim to the throne,
they signed a temporary declaration.
Yeah, but I didn't. You did, but I didn't hear you explain why though.
Yeah,
they signed the declaration.
She needed to become a Dutch citizen so that she could, if she could be a Dutch citizenship.
Yeah, yeah.
But I said that.
Okay.
See, stick to knitting, sweetie. Stick to knitting. He tunes out when I'm just having a conversation, not even doing this, which is okay. This is where I said people are going to make their sandwich.
Pardon me.
Oh, there.
Yeah.
See, there's the bell. Wrap it up.
Okay. So.
And I want to mention one more thing. You've been to Amsterdam. You've been
Yes.
to another. I have as well. And if you're Canadian and you mention you're Canadian when you're in Amsterdam or anywhere else in the villages or towns within the Netherlands, they remember, because this tradition is ongoing. You will be treated as royal because they love the Canadians for that fact alone. They don't forget. So that is very special.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Any other traditions?
There are several traditions.
Well, we've got 5-10 minutes. So
okay, let's talk about,
and then we want to cover off.
We could talk about one of the most colorful festivals in the world is the one in India, because it's supposed to be this. Originally, the legend is this battle with good over evil. So what they do is they smear themselves in colorful paints. Some are powdered paints. They throw powdered paints at one another.
Yes.
Smear each other in paints, and it's just this colorful, crazy singing and dancing in the streets. There are water fights to kind of wash that off, and it's just one of these things that's tradition in India.
Yep.
Another one is in Bulgaria. It's called Baba Marta Day, and that's Grandmother March. So legend has it that she rid herself of her brothers January and February because they drank her wine.
Oh, geez.
So what they do is they create these yarn, made of yarn bracelets, red and white, and the red and white represent rebirth and everything new again. So they wear these bracelets till the first signs of spring, and then when they see the first signs of springs, they hang them in the trees. So if you're going through towns and cities in Bulgaria, you'll notice these red and white ribbon-like bracelets hanging in trees.
Right.
And they stay up there in the tree.
That's great.
Let's see. Should I bring it back to Canada?
Sure.
Well, I'm going to say two things in Canada. One of them being the Japanese cherry blossoms, which there are a lot of them throughout. In Japan, they celebrate the arrival of spring and the equinox. They have meals and dances under cherry blossoms. In Vancouver, they're known for the cherry blossoms. They're throughout the city. And I've been several times in March. My sister lives out there, one of my best friends of over 50 years. Oh, no, 30 years. I'm not that old. So when you go in the springtime, it's magical because everything's in bloom. And it's like you leave where we are. There's still snow on the ground. You head there, no snow. Cherry blossoms, beautiful flowers. Yeah. And when the wind blows, you're showered in this showering rainfall of petals. It's absolutely stunning and beautiful. And in Ontario, maple sugar time. Now, we mentioned the 3 majestic maples just outside. So everywhere in Canada, as children, almost everyone has had a trip to a maple sugar bush.
Yeah.
We have one we've mentioned before, just up the street from where we live.
And we have sugar maples on the property.
We have sugar
We haven't
maples.
tapped them yet.
I know, and we got equipment, and we haven't done it yet. So you tap the maple sap that flows, and how that happens is the warmer days of March, and it begins in early March, when the temperature, sunny days, and the temperature rises above zero, the sap starts to run. But it has to freeze. It has to drop below zero at night, so it get colder at night, and then and the cycle repeats itself over and over. So it has to be warm, cold, and the sap flows.
Yeah.
They tap into it with a little metal tube, and they collect the sap. Will drip out of the maple tree. Boil it for hours upon hours, because it takes like liters and liters of it to get 1 liter of this incredible liquid gold.
Right.
And over 70% of all maple syrup around the world is from Canada, Ontario, New Brunswick on the East Coast, and mostly Quebec.
Yeah, if you ask any farmer in Ontario where the best maple syrup comes, they'll say Ontario. But
Quebec is by far the largest.
I don't know if the rest of Canada would believe that.
Quebec is by far the largest
syrup
producer, and it's the same. It's going to taste the same. It's all fantastic, and
is good.
And it's graded from golden light to this dark, richer color. There's all the different.
My uncle used to make it.
It's absolutely fascinating. And then you go to one of these places, these sugar shacks, which they call them. They do for kids. There's pancake breakfast, and you do the traditional maple syrup over snow, and you get this toffee.
Yeah,
which we tried in one of our episodes. Didn't quite turn out how I would have liked it to. And on the last note of that, I want to mention something very historic and very important with the maple sugar industry.
This is a hint. So listen.
It's called the Great Canadian Maple Syrup Heist.
Yes.
Couldn't you believe it? Okay, so picture it. 2012. What was it now? 3 tons? Yeah, over 3 tons of maple syrup stolen, worth $19 million. $19 million. It's the largest heist in Canadian history as far as value. So what happened? It was an inside job, right? Inside job. The Quebec Association, one of their huge warehouses where the Federation controls everything. And at the warehouses where they store it, as they were filling the barrels, they're 600-pound steel barrels. Well, there was a group of insiders that were siphoning off some of the maple syrup and refilling them with water. And as time passed...
So then the Ontario farmers are correct.
So this liquid gold, over a period of 7 months, 3 tons of it. And in the end, as they were trying to speed up the process, they didn't bother filling the barrels. They just stacked them in the warehouse. So one day an inspector was going to do a count, how much maple syrup do we have? Well, you could climb up on the barrels. They're 700 pounds. But he stumbled and fell, and these barrels fell, and they were empty because there's 600 pounds. They don't move. All of a sudden, it was discovered. We're missing some of that liquid gold.
Yeah.
17 men were then arrested and charged with the largest heist in Canada. Maple syrup history, folks. There you have it.
Yeah. And this is from a Canadian perspective.
It's kind of sad that the only thing of value, but it is expensive. We go up the hill and pick this up, and it's like we pick up this maple syrup. It's a little pricey.
Yes, and again, this is from a Canadian perspective. In the United States, Vermont, huge.
Of course. They're huge producers. They have the same temperament. They have the same temperament. They don't steal. They don't steal the maple syrup. They make it and actually sell it.
Yes, at similar temperature.
Yeah. Yes. But what happened what they did was they transported outside of the province. So away they went outside of the province.
Right.
And with transports, and sold it, and people didn't know in these other provinces, and also to the south of the border, they didn't know that what they were purchasing. Thought it was Canadian maple syrup. Yeah, legit.
So in the 3 minutes we have left, I will try to sneak in the egg dyeing.
Yes,
yes. So I did some egg dyeing with natural dyes, and I guess this goes along with some of the traditions. So one of the traditions that I do is dye eggs for Easter, really, and using natural dyes. And you can use all kinds of things. You can use onion skins, or you can use turmeric. Red cabbage is fun. Red cabbage doesn't smell great, but it's fun.
No, even the bedroom upstairs, I walked in and I was like, smells like dirty socks. That was the cabbage.
Okay, so what you basically, so I'm gonna show them. I'll show them now.
Let's show them.
I'll show turmeric.
Okay.
Oh, what did you want to do? Did you want to do?
No.
So the turmeric eggs.
I didn't know if you could talk and hold things in your
Okay, here I
hands.
can't. So here, those are turmeric. So basically, you
Ooh.
yeah. So you get your saucepan ready. Put in 2 cups of water. Add, and I'll put all of the stuff as well, so you don't have to write it down. And then 2 tablespoons of turmeric, and boil it up. Add a tablespoon of vinegar, and then boil it for 30
Oh,
minutes.
I was holding. Sorry, I was quite like.
And then,
That
so
was
then
rude.
after you boil it for 30 minutes, you reduce the temperature, have it cool down, put it in a pot, make it room temperature, and then you can add your boiled eggs to it. And then the boiled eggs will come out and they'll be yellow. Cabbage is very similar, red cabbage, and you boil your red cabbage, you chop up a cup of cabbage, red cabbage, put it in a pot, and then add 2 cups of water, and boil that for 30 minutes, and then strain it, add your vinegar, and then you put your eggs in it and let it sit as long as you want. Really, you can have it for an hour or longer. Depends. This one
Just let it sit for a while and you get a color.
And then this one was a combination between
A combination of the two.
Yeah. So they're great, a lot of fun. If you can put elastics around them, if you want to see, if you want to do shibori egg dyeing.
Well, if it doesn't show up, one's a little more blue than the other. The other one's more like a teal green.
Yeah.
Blue and yellow.
A lot of fun. So anyway, just to wrap up, Jamie, a couple things. One, thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm looking forward to reading all the comments. I couldn't read all of them when we were chatting because I was purling. And also, I just want to thank the fiber dudes, the YouTube, the tube dudes, for putting this on and having us be part of this wonderful experience. It's so much fun. We love getting organized and putting this on for everyone. Love reading the comments as well.
So thank you so much for joining us. And do we have to ask a question?
We have to ask a question. So
what's the question? The question is, how valuable was that maple syrup that was stolen? There was a number attached to it. It was the largest in Canada.
Yes. And so where do they answer that?
You already said that.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to remind them. So that in the foot, you weren't listening then.
What comes around goes around.
It's in the notes, show notes. So just click on and you can enter there. Yes. So before we wrap up, I just wanted to hand over to Jamie. Jamie's got a poem, a spring poem.
We have like a minute. Okay, I'm going to ramble through this. So this has to do with the lilacs. Lilacs. This is from Anna Green Gables, and a little bit of added to it. So it is: Christopher dropped to his knees and gazed out into the March morning, his eyes glistening with delight. Oh, wasn't it beautiful? Wasn't it a lovely place? Suppose it really wasn't going to stay here. He imagined he would. The scope of imagination here at the cabin. Dye stuffs everywhere, colors of the rainbow all around. There's sumac growing outside. In the backyard, majestic pines, birch, and oak. And the trees were so thick-set with blossoms that hardly a leaf was to be seen. In the garden below were lilac trees, purple with flowers, and their dizzily sweet fragrance drifted up to the window in the morning spring wind.
Fantastic.
We got to go.
Thank you so much. So stick around, and Stuart is going to be up next, and he's starting in 13 minutes.
2 minutes ago.
And you're going to be automatically transported over to Stuart into the wool patch.
Merci,
take care, everyone.
Amis, à la prochaine.
Bye-bye. Is it